Hello friends, Anderson here. Welcome to the second part of the second session of EVENNIGHT, the building / playthrough series of Dungeon 23. We'll seamlessly pick up again where we left off in the Sunday episode, so no big lead-in. Although if you'd like to subscribe, comment, leave a like, all of that, thank you. Here we go. I'm also now jumping on to A6, which is the fighting pit, I think. Yes, it is. And with that in mind, I feel like we need some kind of a circular space, circular square that is perhaps like a fountain square that is closer on the path towards the keep, which I'm assuming is where this is leading, towards the northern path. And since this is what my gut sort of demands, I'm also not going to roll for that one. I'm just going to decide that we are having this corridor lead into a circular arrangement. And we'll make this sort of a fountain with a block in the middle and with King Alaric standing there. But what happened in the meantime is there is like a rough fencing erected around here that is sort of all reclaimed wood from the buildings that are around it that are just broken. It's not very even, and we have like a platform with a scaffolding over here, some steps leading up, and there is also like some wooden scaffolding around the statue, all kind of disrespectful because we remember Orin is not particularly loyal. And like elevated, we have like a wooden walkway here that connects to this viewing platform. So we get like a central platform, wooden walkway, scaffolding with a platform, and like a fencing. And of course in here we have just all sorts of dirt and pools of blood and definitely fighting dogs. And of course, standing in the center of it all, the pitmaster. That's sort of the mental image I get from that. Looking at our overall layout, we're currently we got another way around here, which might also link up again with like up down here in the bottom, which might link up to another direction up north. But in general, I feel like there is like a nexus point now where we can go into like probably 3 directions. That would probably make sense. We can also, if we make too many directions, we can always have chaos truncate them off abruptly and just, that path. The next step is into nothingness, which means I would like to give sort of 3 directions to this. Make it a proper crossroads kind of, not too symmetrical, of course. And one goes to the south, potentially to link up with the area near the church. So we have one of those is probably, those are going to be running towards the keep. Put this on a new page once we start developing in that direction. And this will link up somewhere, or it'll have previously linked up and then there's like a whole chunk bitten out of reality and it no longer leads anywhere. Now, that was a lot of building by extrapolation, which is something I also will occasionally do if we already have a lot of pieces in place and we can just kind of assume certain things or put certain things in place that make sense to be there. Like, the fighting pit needs to have some kind of design, and I figure it's a bit Mad Maxy around here with all the crumbling buildings. I'm guessing this whole area is again, there's an adjacency of just collapsed buildings, collapsed infrastructure. Like, we assume there are some walls left standing, but overall the whole houses have just collapsed, leaving the half bitten off walls and piles of rubble that are very hard to traverse and have buried everything interesting underneath. So we have little point in exploring there with our party. And this is just a paved square, but also, very muddy and badly maintained, of course, after over a decade of this fun and games down here. I think to stick in line with our pitmaster theme, we can roll yet another 3 items from a bandit hideout, because it makes sense to me. What I would like to know, though, as far as the pitmaster goes, is he alone or does he have company? I think he probably has company. even if it's a training session, even if the former town guards are going through the motion of attending their New Year's church service, I think he probably has company, and those then probably are also sentient, like the pitmaster presumably is. 20 extreme, no. Okay, so the pitmaster is perhaps not even loyal to Orin. Then he's just a complete rogue agent, sentient undead. Maybe is he undead? Yes. Okay. He's a ghoul, I think. Ooh, that would be cool. He's a ghoul, and occasionally he goes down in the crypta, has a little snack. And otherwise are his dogs undead? Extreme, yes. What the hell is going on? Oh my god. So zombie dogs. The pitmaster is a ghoul. He's unaligned, so not with Orin. He just gets by because he's got a pack of zombie dogs and keeps the coast clear. And since we assume that the big bosses are mainly with the king or in the central keep and only show up here perhaps during the end of the month next moon dark, then he just goes into hiding. And that's how he makes for lack of a better term, living. Maybe turned into a ghoul on desperate measures, because he kept his sanity initially and then fell into cannibalism and then sort of necrophagy, and that turned him into a ghoul. That sounds like a likely story. So very rogue agent, completely detached from sort of carving out his own territory here for his own amusement, training his dogs, and then also training them more out of necessity to perhaps fight off whatever undead, restless dead are lurking still in these areas closer to the keep, where I'm assuming this just gets thicker and thicker, and that's also where this zombie guard detachment comes from, that is going down to have a church service based on their old impulses. All that is to say, I would still like to have 3 items from a bandit hideout, so I'm going to roll those up now. Oh yeah, I do make a note though that we have zombie fighting dogs, which also means we have a zombie fighting dog in the pitmaster's home, which means that Quinn's deafening scream that kills animals is not going to work on these. And this presents us with a scenario where there is a bucket here with 3 arrows left in it and many more arrows shattered and on the ground or even in the scaffolding, as the pitmaster occasionally shoots his bow at the dogs to train them evasion, and also just out of sheer frustration and boredom. There is a bag of torture tools placed on the initial scaffolding where the pitmaster can pick it up again, take it along. Perhaps something he stole from closer to the keep, since Orin is also a torturer, not only an executioner. So maybe there's like a link there where he did something, well, a bit rascally to him. And we have I wrote it as an elf skull. I describe it as a strange non-human skull, perhaps elf or fae kind of creature. We think in this human-centric world that elves in the classic sense don't exist as in having their own manifest civilization, but perhaps they are coming through a different reality of sorts. So this could give our learned party member some pause and could come back as an interesting topic as well, if this, well, just to figure out if we spread some clues later on in the dungeon on who this was and how they ended up there and potentially got like fed to the dogs by the pitmaster. But I think I'm happy with this, happy enough to roll the dungeon die. There is a discovery here, it's treasure again, and it's a piece of armor. So let's just see, is it light or heavy armor? The likelihood is that it's light armor, so we'll go with, is it light armor? Extreme, yes. So it is extreme, yes. A kind of special kind of light armor. We'll see if it matters. We'll take a cue out of the black sword hack loot rules and say, I'll roll 1d6 now. I roll a 3, and if I roll a 3 again on another d6, it fits one of our party. No. So it's a piece of light armor, but none of our current bunch can wear it because it won't fit I'll note that the Pitmaster himself is the source of the special piece of light armor, and that it doesn't fit anyone, but since we did an extreme yes roll here, I'd say it can be made to fit, can be reworked. So if we find like requires an armor workbench or similar, so if we find an armory in the keep with some requisite tools or something, maybe it can be made to fit if we even manage to not get all killed by this Pitmaster and the zombie dogs, but I'm happy with that for now. So let's flip back to our A7, and I think this is the same muddy paving that we see before, except that the collapsed structures here are more like caved in small hovels and maybe some larger houses here. This is sort of shitty alley where some of the more destitute people used to hang out. Just to explain a bit the windiness of the road here. Let's keep things a little fresh and interesting. Let's roll a die 20 on the strange locations table, because maybe there's a strange location in this alleyway. Mythic resting place. This place has a small innocuous marker grave or even just a carving that signifies that remains of a famous hero or town leader are buried somewhere below. Okay, then I think what we could do is we'll put here the old town cemetery, call that a 7-2, and the only point of that is the hero's grave. Of course there are many other grave markers. You'll forgive me if I mark them down with crosses. That is not to indicate that this means any particular religious affiliation. It's just to remind me that these are grave markers. So this could also be very interesting to explore. Maybe another entrance here to a 7-3. I think this is another one of those we'll see it when we get there kind of moments. Let's clean out the dice tray a bit and give it some more of the old dressing. One general and one weird. And what that gets us is an iron hook lying around, just left behind, a free grappling hook, I would say, and some scratchings in the mud where a simple game, a tic-tac-toe game, has been played variously, fairly recently, obviously, if it's still fresh in the mud, which sort of raises the question, of course, who did this? And are they still around? Is there some pockets of sanity, of people hiding from this craziness still here somewhere? Maybe the dungeon die knows the answer. And the dungeon die says it's a passive encounter, so I'll roll this as a settlement encounter and adapt it to our needs, which means die 88, black die goes first. 52, an old woman is selling old books from a cart. Okay, so so we have an NPC encounter here, a passive encounter, where an old woman is, I think, initially in hiding. Maybe our PCs, when they get here, have to do some coercing or finding. And who is she selling the books to? Well, there's probably stuff going on here. This is, again, reminding me a bit of Demon Souls, where you also have merchants, and they're just kind of stockpiling random stuff, and what's the currency even? So maybe we need to pay in rations or something. We'll see. But this gets us to the point where Murdoch ascends, pulls himself out into the muddy road here, giving perhaps a contemplative look to the strung up corpses dangling above the road, and trying not to paint too fresh a picture in his mind that at some point in his life this might have also been a future for him and his criminal activities, and that in a way it probably also is what landed him here in a sort of prolonged state of execution, potentially. And as Nellike exits and Quinn behind, the three assemble, take a look in either direction. Fire's still burning, says Nellike. Don't like it much. Well, I most certainly agree, says Quinn. We should go the other way. Not bloody likely, replies Murdoch. Or do you want to turn your back on that mess? And Quinn just stares at him and gulps, but doesn't protest. So, without much further word, but now with their weapons perhaps in an enhanced state of readiness, at least in Nellike's case, who claymore in both hands, advances, and Murdoch falls in a few steps behind and off to her side with his serrated sword ready to be pulled out, as Quinn just follows around nervously and now watches over his shoulder in the other direction. And they approach, and as they approach, they have this gag-inducing experience of this thick smoke down here, and what we perhaps can do is have them go for a constitution check, and if they don't succeed, then their next roll will be at a disadvantage. We'll do simultaneous rolls: Nelica red, Murdoch black, Quinn blue. And they all succeed. What an opening. Okay, so they walk closer under the grisly display above with these dangling corpses and approach the bonfire, the pyre, the flagstones and the mud itself getting kind of slippery as the burning fat from the fire seeps out disgustingly. And they perhaps are too preoccupied with maintaining their footing on this nasty underground to notice the biting stench in their noses. Looks like service is still in session and someone's been polite enough to leave the weapons at the door. Nelica scoffs. All the better for us. We certainly don't have to immediately hit the first strike, says Quinn. We sure don't, the warrior responds. But then you go in first. And the scholarly, comparatively reedy figure of Quinn shivers at the thought and loosens his collar a bit. Don't sweat it, you two hang back. Murdoch grins and sneaks up on the entrance of the chapel. So we'll do a stealth roll here, which let me check what attribute check this would be. Doesn't explicitly call it out, so I'm going to be self-serving and go with dexterity because he's amazing at that. So we need to roll under 15. We do. So Murdoch sneaks up on the chapel entrance and lines against the wall, glances inside at this scene unfolding there. But due to the murky light in there, he can only see that silhouette outlined against the stained glass windows in the back. Perhaps even the unlight of the chaos falling in from outside there. And he sees the figures with the back turned of these head askew, half rotted corpses standing there in their tattered guard uniforms and swaying slightly and making the odd noise as they try and follow the service and go along with what their routine formerly was. And Quinn pokes his head around the corner and looks at the shrine to see which deity it's dedicated to, and finds that it is Torvath, the Sunderer, the god of strength, whose month is the 4th month of the year. And glancing to the other side, he suppresses a shocked expression as he sees that gaping nothingness where a wall once was, and that's enough to make him beat a quick retreat back to Quinn and Nelica, and they confer after he describes what he's seen. Well, it would certainly be rude to interrupt, wouldn't it? Says Quinn. Yes, my favorite kind of interruptions, responds Nelica. I'm intrigued by whoever it is that is conducting this service. Maybe we should wait it out and see if those rotting fellows shuffle off again. Might be worthwhile to have a little conversation. I think we'll have to do a charisma check here for Murdoch to see how convincing he is with this. He rolls under his charisma score, so Nelica, although she is more in favor of cutting down the zombies, is also perhaps a little reluctant to take on that many. Fine by me. Let them walk off and ambush them later. And so I think we'll do a little bit of an exercise in hiding, which I would also say we use dexterity for, and we'll do it as a group check, which means if 2 of them succeed, they all succeed. So again, red Nelica, black Murdoch, and blue Quinn. So they withdraw to behind some of the rubble in a dead angle of the exit of the chapel entrance, and even though Quinn's head pokes out a little bit too far, as they wait for about half an hour, as they start hearing the shuffling noises of the zombie soldiers and their captain coming out and picking up their weapons again and making to march towards the north. Murdoch pushes Quinn's head down just as a zombie routinely scanning the periphery turns glowing eyes in their direction, and they get away with it since two of them succeeded. And that ghostly patrol in the burning illumination of the bonfire that is still fueled by whatever magic and chaotic force is keeping it there. This group of shambling shadows in front of the brightness wanders off into the night. And as the footsteps recede and the silhouettes are no longer visible, our three make for the entrance of the chapel. And they, well, do they encounter somebody there, or is that person perhaps now receded down into the crypta and hiding out there, or in one of the other adjacent rooms and isn't immediately visible, which might give us a chance to yoink the gem-encrusted. Never mind. I'd like them to be there, of course. I'm leaning towards a yes. They're still in there. So who is this? Natural assumption would be it's a priest, but it could also be somebody who just goes through the motions because they're terrified, and it's kind of the only way they figure out to stay safe is if they pretend to do the mass, because then the zombies kind of associate this with, oh, this is friend-shaped, and leave them alone. So, is it a priest? Yes, okay. So it is actually a priest of Torvath the Sunderer. Let's do a name from the Book of Names, rolling on the Englishy table with a die 6 in tow, 1 to 3 male, 4 to 6 female, in line with how the tables are lined out. It is Edmund, the priest of Torvath. I think we'll have an NPC card here. And we can, of course, assume what the motivation for Edmund is to minister to these poor devils, but perhaps it's not that clear-cut, and Edmund is a bit of a more shady character. So let's take out Knave and roll up a bunch of stuff. This gives us a man with an imposing, brawny physique who has a broken face and who has adorned himself with the war paint of Torvath and whose long hair falls all the way down his back. His clothing is stained from the time he spent in these circumstances. He is stoic but bitter and of blunt speech. His background is that he's always been a cleric. He's never been anything else. His misfortune is that he was mutilated somehow, presumably perhaps tortured by Orin, which broke his face, and he's of a neutral alignment. And so, 3 figures step through the chapel doorway, and one brawny, broken-faced man in stained ritual garb with his face painted streaks of ash over a white foundation steps forward to greet them with a quizzical expression, but nonetheless spreading his arms and inviting them. Some unfamiliar faces grace Torvath's hall tonight. Do be welcome, even if our circumstances are much reduced. He perhaps is surprised, but his discipline, his religious training, and his innate stoicism just make him switch into the mode that he's most comfortable with. And he is also perhaps a patient man who is sure that whoever these 3 strangers are, they will perhaps share how on earth they manage to find their way into his hall. And with that, conversation will open up next time. Thank you very much for watching. I'll catch you then, and bye for now.